Hello and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guests today have been creating TTRPG content on so many platforms that the whole world is their stage. Games to be played in small villages, under Broadway lights, and online. So, mission accomplished? Well, no, this is not a curtain call, but a chance to shine the limelight on their past, current, and future achievements. The question asked by my guests is to be or not to be a villain. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome game designers, content creators, podcasters, and thespians, James Introcaso and Rudy Basso. Welcome both of you to the show.
Thank
Wow.
you. So many theater references in that intro. Yes, we're applauding to the listeners.
Absolutely.
Applause.
So good. So good.
Well, it's only because you're so good that I'm able to sort of reword your work back to you in such a way. And for those that aren't maybe familiar with each of you, which is astonishing considering your sort of each of your respective portfolios within the TTRPG community, would you mind giving us a brief introduction about yourselves, please?
Sure, yeah. I'm James Introcaso. I'm the lead game designer at MCDM, and I've written a couple of books. Worked with Wizards of the Coast and Kobold Press, Roll20, and a couple other places. But now full-time over there working with Matt Colville on some fun stuff. And I've worked with this guy who is also here several times.
Yeah, my name is Rudy Basso. I've done my best to grab James's coattails as he skyrocketed into the sky, to the moon, to the galaxies. I've done a few things around here and there. I've done some audiobooks. I've written for MCDM. I've written for a few other publishers. But just trying to catch a break.
Wow. I'm glad that you both caught a break and carried on. I think my first exposure to you was the Punch and Kickatorium from the Demon Plague.
Yes. We've done a
back.
few podcasts in our day too, James. We used to run a podcast network even about
We sure did.
tabletop RPGs. And yeah, we did a full 40 session campaign, right? Based on one of your books.
We did the Demon Plague. Yes. Yeah.
Still a podcast you could listen to if you want to hear some silliness.
It's still a very
Yep. All episodes available on YouTube as well. If you want to see our faces while we do it. It's true. I leave it on for my dog when I go out. If like there's going to be thunder or lightning or something, because I know that my voice will be going for a while. And also, my dog is a big fan of Rudy, and so it's another familiar voice that she can hear.
Fair enough. Well, Rudy, you've got your own dog as well, I believe.
I do. Yes, I have a dog too. Nice.
Are they also
yes, her name is Jewel. And I'm uncle to James's dog, so that's very nice too.
So, your respective back catalogs have sort of covered a whole different range of systems, and a few we'll sort of get into. But the reason I really wanted to get you back on the show, and thank you so much for joining me again, James and Rudy. It's always nice to sort of get in contact and be in contact with you. Is your latest release, which is sort of dual system and yet stands apart, to be or not to be a villain. Would you mind giving us a bit of background about this release and how it all came together, please?
Sure. So I, in college, where James and I met, was in a production of the Bard's finest work, Hamlet. Oh. And then James and I, post-graduation, were both involved in a summer community theater that did a Shakespeare show every summer. So the both of us are pretty familiar with Shakespeare's back catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And James runs a convention every year. Well, it used to be every year. We've had to halt it because of COVID, but it's like a little friend convention. We call it Introcaso after the founder, who's James. And one year he ran a game called Of Drow Origin, right, James? That's what it's called.
Correct. Yes.
And Of Drow Origin is for 9 player characters or something like that. And one dungeon master. It's actually, ironically, kind of a play on Romeo and Juliet, where there's a drow man in love with a human woman, and it's about their respective families coming together for a wedding and the hijinks that will ensue. it was a really cool. So I was in another game during that time, but I went downstairs in the basement and watched this game being played, and it was a really, really cool premise and concept, but it was kind of messy. It was kind of hard to follow. Um, like I said, a really cool concept, not the best execution. So that I had that kind of brewing in my mind for a while, and I'm like, I want another game that's like 9 player characters.
Mm.
That's just so fun to me. That concept of having a big game with a bunch of people. And I'm very familiar, it was kind of Romeo and Juliet. I know Hamlet. Hamlet has a ton of
Mm.
characters. And then, well, when James was running it by himself, there was just so much going on at once. It was hard for him to single-handedly dungeon master, even a professional dungeon master like James Introcaso. I think you were kind of just were like, all right, you go. It was just like you go in order, and it was just really difficult. So I thought, well, let's add a second game master to it as well. And so that's kind of where it began.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm talking too
Yeah,
much.
no, I do want to. So that module of Drow Origin is actually still exists, and it's from Distracted Mind Games. A guy named
Hmm.
Randy Aitken put it together, and it also, I think it's probably a thing where if I were, it was my first time ever running it, and if I had been more
Mm.
prepared, or if I had had more support, I think it probably would have gone better. So I don't want to. It's not on the module, right? It's on
Oh.
the person.
Mm.
But I do want to. I think like that's where the genesis for this came from, because it was like, well, what if you did have more support? What if you
Mm.
did have someone? Because essentially, when you have 9 players in a group, right? The focus of that game was a lot of like backstabbing and intrigue. They're not fighting anybody other than each other,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Which is how you're able to manage things like combat and stuff like that, because it's not 9 PCs against 9 dragons, it's 9 PCs against each other.
Mm.
But that's really hard to do when it's like there's these 2 separate factions, but then within the factions there's infighting, and these people want to get together and have a conversation, and this person's passing you a note, and this, right? So
Mm.
like, how do you manage that? And Rudy came up with the idea of 2 GMs, which I think was brilliant.
Yeah, so we started out writing the D&D version of the game, and it went great. We had like a finished kind of build manuscript, and James had just finished writing a Zweihander campaign, like full campaign, called Eternal Night of Lockwood.
Mm.
Check it out, Amazon now, or wherever books are sold. And so he had a relationship with Andrews McMeel, which is a publisher here in America that had an RPG division that I think just closed. But we pitched it to them, and they were like, "This is cool. Can you also make it like a Zweihander version, because that's our in-house RPG?" So we said, "Yeah, we can do that." But it was an amazing opportunity, actually, because we wrote sort of an alternate universe version of the Hamlet, the D&D game.
Okay.
So whereas, I'll just give us pretty easy. Rosencrantz is a man in the D&D version. We decided, why not gender swap? So Rosencrantz is a woman in the Zweihander version. Characters that might be more hesitant or reticent to act might be way more aggressive in the other book. We did a lot of changing, so it really is 2 different experiences. I mean, even the time period, like the Hamlet game is more, or the D&D game is more traditional fantasy, whereas the Zweihander game is more steampunk
Okay.
and has a lot of like more limited magic
Hmm.
opportunities. So yeah, in the way the game, do you have a copy of the book, James?
I
Just to
do.
show, okay,
Yes.
just to show Adam here. Sorry, listeners at home, but the way the book is presented is you upside down, James. You no, yeah, there we go, there we go. You can play it one side, and it's the D&D. Then you flip the book vertically, and it's the Zweihander version. So halfway through the book, the text flips upside down.
Ah.
And it's got like, we're so pumped with the amount of support they gave us. There's perforations for character sheets. There's even a deck of cards that you punch
Hmm.
out. That's the rumor deck. There's a lot of like funky mechanics that we added to it as well to make it more streamlined. You're not going to get a full character sheet. You're going to get something a lot more truncated with less spells. It's hard. I could go on for like 40 minutes talking about it because it is really unique in this space, I think, and way different than a lot of other modules, I guess.
Yeah.
James, agreed?
Yeah, I do. One of the things that is very cool about it to me is that you take on the persona of Hamlet's cast, right? And so you're Claudius and Gertrude and Hamlet and those people. And as you investigate these mysteries of like, why is the king dead and that sort of thing, you're also vying for the throne, while at the same time the king of Norway, Fortinbras, is coming. But if you don't know Hamlet at all, it's a really great experience because we change a lot of the stuff. For instance, if you've seen Hamlet, you know that Claudius murdered the king at the beginning of Hamlet. In this one, we don't know who that is. It's determined by a random die roll that the GM makes at the beginning, right? So it could be anybody.
It could be also up to 4 people. Not just one person. Yes.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of different things like that to make it unexpected. And then, for whatever reason, when we made this Zweihander version, we were like, we're going to make this totally different so that the book is replayable. So it's not just a conversion. It really is. And we know this through playtesting because we playtested the D&D version, and then we got the same people to playtest the Zweihander version for the most part. And they were like, yep, feels like a different game. Feels like a totally different experience, and we did not know what to expect. And that was pretty great. So, all the events changed, all of the character backstories and their positions and stuff changed. Even, like, the attitude of Fortinbras in the 2 is very different. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortinbras is a vampire also.
Oh, all right.
It's fantasy.
These spins and twists keep coming. This is great. So with this, and for the benefit of the listener, that as Rudy described, you turn the book vertically. It's not 2 separate books. It is a combined volume, tome, article, great source of content. With the fact that you have sort of used both D&D and Zweihander, and you've changed Zweihander, which is traditionally grim dark, to the steampunk. What was it like sort of tweaking these systems to sort of suit this larger group size and yet sort of flowing play style that you have described?
So we did add some unique mechanics that are on both versions of the game. We added something called story tokens, which you earn through good role playing, because everyone loves mechanics like that. And the way that works is you play one, and then the reason we have 2 GMs is, at times it can be hectic, and sometimes switching off who's taking the reins is a good idea. But again, this is a game about backstabbing and diplomacy. So with these story tokens, you can be like, hey, I want to take Adam and go off on my own for a moment. And then the second game master will go with you, listen in, adjudicate any, checks that need to be made or anything like that. And kind of just be there so people can scheme against each other and connive when the opportunity arises. So I think adding that helped kind of keep the game similar, even though there's such different systems. And we did try to keep kind of the high fantasy elements of the D&D game. Spoilers, there might be a dragon involved. And while we did make it more steampunk, it is still dark. I remember one of the notes James and I would give each other when we were writing it was like, make it more Zweihander. So that means, okay, someone has to die here or something. There has to be a fight to the death here. It needs to be more metal. That was kind of a thing we would try and do often.
Yeah, and the sort of the aspects of one of the reasons that Zweihander was good to take it into like this little more steampunky place is, I sort of think of there are two varieties of steampunk in my mind, and steampunk enthusiasts will tell you there are probably many more than that. So don't at me. But there is there's sort of like machines and dirigibles and like look at all this cool stuff. But then there's like the gaslight I'm gonna get stabbed in the middle of the night because the gaslights are few and far between as I'm making my way between them, and things aren't as nice. And I would say ours is steampunk by night, right? Like our version of Zweihander, which is what makes it still appropriate to be with those rules. Zweihander has rules for injury and infection and things like that. And so it really fits that aesthetic kind of well of like, well, you might go to a surgeon if you get hurt, as opposed to D&D, which feels more fantasy and is like, well, you might go to a cleric if you get hurt, right?
Yeah.
So those aesthetics are definitely still part of the game, which was part of the fun then in making the conversion and saying like, all right, well, in Zweihander, so for instance, you get handed a pregen when you sit down, and your pregen has different motivations, things that they're trying to find out, different attitudes towards all of the other characters. I would say on the whole, the Zweihander characters are a little edgier. Which is interesting because it also means they're a little more honest. The D&D characters are also backstabbing and hate each other in many ways. Some of them love each other, some of them hate each other, but there's more of like a Downton Abbey, oh, we're all in court and we're putting up a facade. Whereas in Zweihander, I think that falls away a little bit quicker, and it's more like, I don't trust you, and I'm going to tell you I don't trust you.
Yeah, all of our pregens have written relationships with every other character in the game. And we say, this is a jumping off point. Play with this. If you want to lean deep into it, fine. If you want to change things around and do your own thing, that's fine too. We're excited. We're just excited you're playing.
Yeah.
Oh, and goals. Everyone has a goal at the start of the game too. That's also important.
Do they change between the systems? Do the goals?
What's that?
Do the goals in the D&D side? Do they differ to the Zweihander side because of the play styles slot differ?
I'm trying.
It's a good question.
I think some of them, because some characters are so. As James said, all the characters are members of, and this is not loyal to the play. They're all members of the Danish Council, and there is no in the play like Claudius is king. And Hamlet is upset because he thinks he should be king because he's next in line. We throw that out. Claudius is not king. No one's king. They will elect a new monarch at the end of the game. So some people are way more interested in becoming monarch, and some people are more interested in like marrying Ophelia, for example. That's one specific person. But that might change. Yes, because the characters are so different between the systems. Their motivations might. I mean, Hamlet is just like way angrier in the Zweihander version. His goal is to get revenge.
Nice.
Spoilers, not spoilers. Whereas in the other one, he's just more like reticent and trying to figure out who he is.
Yeah. And it's also a chance, we tell everybody at the beginning of the game, hey, this is where your character starts. But if over the course of this, you decide this person I hate, I actually now trust, or this, like, we want those things to happen. So every time you play or run the game, it really can be very, very different. I don't know that we ever had the same experience twice, or even close to it. And I think part of the thing that was really interesting about that was that some people who maybe it was in their backstory that like, yeah, you're ambitious and you want the throne, they would become, instead of the monarch, they'd become the kingmaker, right? And say like, oh, I can see nobody likes me except for this person who does like me, and everybody likes them. So if I can set them up to become the monarch, then I have control and stake in the game, right? Like that kind of thing was really cool to watch happen and evolve. So giving people these opening attitudes and motivations helped set up everything. But it was great to see when the direction that people took it in was really cool.
Yeah, and everyone has friends. That's important. Yeah. We got some feedback that's like, everyone hates me and I don't have any friends and I don't know what to do. So playtesting is very important. But everyone has like at least two built-in allies. Maybe they're allies because they're blood relatives. Maybe they're allies because you were betrothed to them as a child, or they're your best friends since you were children. But it's not like everyone is going to be on their own at any given point. You're going in with pals, Whether they're still your pals by the end of the game, that's, well, we'll say. But no one should ever feel like, oh, geez, this game isn't fun. Everyone hates me because the game says that everyone hates me because that's what my character sheet says.
Mm.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, 100%. And playtesting was so valuable because of this, because there were a few points, especially at the beginning, where everybody was like, wow, nobody trusts Claudius and Gertrude because they read the play.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, all right, well, how can we fix that, right? How do we make that better? And set the expectation that, like, no, they might actually be good. So yeah, that was it was very fun to work on and to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned there about having friends and not being alone. So we can sort of increase friends and make connections. Where can we find each of you and all the things you're associated with on social media, please?
Yes, I am on Twitter at Rudy Basso. Very original.
And I shockingly am on Twitter at James Introcaso. Also very original.
Hey, it works for you, and it has done, and will continue to do so. I will make sure links are down in the description below for each of you and all the things we discussed during the course of this interview. Moving from sort of to be or not to be a villain into the systems themselves, each of you have worked on a variety of projects. So we can fall down the D&D sort of side of things, or we can start on the Zweihander side of things. I will let you guys choose.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think it's probably good to start on the D&D side, because that's probably the side that your audience knows the best and is the the popular one, and then we can draw the distinction with Zweihander, which would probably be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So each of you have worked on releases in various ways. James, your work is prolific, to say the least. And as you mentioned, you are working with MCDM. So what's that experience been like with Arcadia and all the releases coming out of there? Flea Mortals, for example. Rudy, we'll get a shout out to you there as well. So what has that experience been like?
Yeah, so Rudy has worked on Arcadia and Flea Mortals with us too. So he's definitely familiar with the pipeline and everything. It's been really interesting. Coming in MCDM, what we sort of do is we try to make your game better, and we try to give you an opportunity to. We want to fill in the gaps of D&D, right? And so the idea behind Flea Mortals is that we're making a monster book, and we're trying to create more tactical, more interesting monsters that are more than just a bag of hit points. And that's not to say all Wizards of the Coast monsters are bags of hit points, but we wanted to create monsters, that were fun to fight and fun to run, and didn't make combat as much of a grind. And they would surprise you and delight you and do things to you that were interesting, but also weren't frustrating. Which, again, that's been a lot of playtesting, right? So we don't really have any monsters in the book that stun or paralyze you, for instance, because you miss your turn, which means that we do have monsters that do weird things like cut off your head and then replace their head with it, so that they look like you and you're still alive but wandering around without your head on, right? Like stuff like that. That's really fun and whimsical. Not everything is that out there, but that's just one of my favorite creatures from the book.
Yeah, I wish I wrote that. That's really good.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I wish I had written it too. But it's another author named Paul Hughes who put that out there, right? And I think Rudy can tell you a little bit about the stuff that he's doing for that book. But so that's part of it. And then the Arcadia, our mission with Arcadia, which is our 5e monthly magazine, is that we ask authors to pitch, and then the authors tell us what they want to write. And it's sort of an open field in terms of like, pitch us anything as long as it is something someone could drop into their game. It can be, and it's not huge, right? Like, we're not going to do a campaign length adventure, but we might do a couple new subclasses or spells or magic items or a new set of rules that you can drop into your game or that kind of thing. And those authors often are like, this is the thing I've always wanted to make. I've never seen it in the game, or I've never seen it done the way I want to do it. And so let's do it, right? And sometimes it's just a couple of unique spells. Sometimes it's a whole new subsystem of rules for something, and it's really fun. So that's sort of our mission initially at MCDM, was to fill in the gaps of Dungeons and Dragons. Now we're making our own RPG, and so we're excited to move on to that. But it's sort of outside the scope of what we're talking about here right now.
Well, yeah, before we move on to that, to be fair, Rudy, as mentioned, you have contributed to the Flea Mortals. I believe it's packet 5. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know if my packet's out yet, actually.
Your packet is not out yet.
Okay. So what can you tell us about your contribution to...
Feel free to say whatever you like,
anything?
Rudy.
Okay, so
Yeah.
one of the parts of Flea Mortals towards the end of the book, I believe, is a bunch of drop-in evil parties.
That's
a
right.
group of foes that complement each other, that work off of each other, that have a shared history that you can drop in to fight your player characters. And mine was a group of monsters called the Abominations, that an evil arcane geneticist and a druid got married and decided to create the perfect race of monstrosities that are a combination of like humanoid torsos and like the head of a lion and the legs of an ostrich. Just a bunch of creatures. It's like, that's a bad example, but
great example.
it would be really fast and really fierce. That's just an example. But yeah, it's like a bunch of weird monsters, and they fought back and ate their masters, and in doing so, they now have a taste for flesh. So they kind of run around and just eat people. So you gotta watch out for them, or they'll eat you. So that's 5th level or something, and so they're a good. Like I said, they have abilities that complement each other already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not like when you're trying to build a party or build an encounter. It's so in a lot of creatures in Flea Mortals do this already. They have categories, and it's very easy to encounter build. But a lot of times you're like, well, what do I guess I'll add this guy and this guy and this guy. This guy casts a spell, but they don't have a history or a background. I love the idea of these evil monster parties or evil parties is that they do have that. They have goals, they have motivations, they have a shared history, they have interrelationships between themselves. So it's a really cool thing. And then I wrote a subsystem on how to eat monsters in Arcadia too. So look at that.
Eat or be eaten.
It's almost like your villain party is the revenge of you writing that article.
Exactly.
How can we
if it's something about me, something's getting eaten.
Fair enough. It sounds a little bit. Make sure I get the right movie reference. Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's, but even crazier.
Which is definitely something I'll be looking out for sure, because that just fires the imagination. It's brilliant. I'll definitely looking forward to that. So moving on from there, and James, you mentioned it, MCDM now looking, playtesting, and sort of bringing together your own RPG, your own rule set. We've seen some of it come up on Twitter and other social medias, but what's that been like from Genesis to current iteration?
James has already designed a full system.
He has done Burn Bright.
Oh, that's true. Burn Bright. Yeah. I think we talked about that one many moons ago.
Did.
Adam.
Still available on Roll20. Still a fantastic system.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're still very much in the preliminary stages. To make a long story short, we started talking about our own RPG when I was hired at MCDM, because Matt asked me, what do you want to do in the future? And I said, well, I know I don't want to work on 5e forever. And he was like, cool, neither do I. And I was like, awesome, that sounds great.
It was like a year and a half ago, just to clarify too, right? When did you start at MCDM?
Yeah, so I started over 2 years ago now.
Yeah. Okay, just to give time context.
Yeah. And so we have been kicking around and sharing ideas, and then we got a little more serious when Wizards of the Coast bought D&D Beyond. And the reason we did that is because we already get a lot of questions about like, well, why isn't your stuff on D&D Beyond? I can't use it in my game if it's not D&D, right? And it's like, well, we're not allowed to sell there. We can't use that marketplace. There isn't a marketplace really for anybody other than Wizards of the Coast. And so we can't put our stuff up there. And so we thought like, oh, the more people that get locked into that ecology, the less they're going to want to buy MCDM D&D stuff. So we should start on that. And then this whole thing with the OGL happened. And that sort of, so the metaphor we've been saying is that we've been building a rocket in the backyard. And every once in a while we go out there and tinker with it, and then Wizards of the Coast lit the rocket for us, and now we're hanging on for dear life. So we've really just started development of that. We're still full speed ahead on Flea Mortals. We have a commitment to that, and we want to make it the best book we can. We have a couple other 5e projects that still need to come out, and then we'll be full steam ahead on this. So right now we're just trying to nail down really the core of the system, and like, how do we, it's going to be a high fantasy game. It does not use a D20 right now at this moment in time. It uses dice with special symbols on them. And right now we're trying to master, like, how do we make battle fun? Right? That's our number one priority. How do we make combat fun? How do we make a core that we can spin out into things outside of combat that will also be fun? And how can we make the other pillars of the game matter as much as combat? So that's where our minds are right now, but we're in the very preliminary stages.
So, bit of I won't say a trick question as such, but yep, it's back. With respect to the experience each of you has with a variety of systems, where do you find combat, which seems to be a challenge at times in systems like D&D? Which systems do you feel do combat better or differently and therefore more engaging?
It's a good question.
Well, I'm always going to go back to like Night's Black Agents.
Yeah.
Which I like a game where combat is really deadly.
Okay.
I'm generally a person who doesn't want to fight all the time. That like, let's talk this out, sir. Let us parlay instead of battling. In a game like Dungeons and Dragons, you're kind of supposed to fight a lot usually. Like the game is built when you level up, you get new ways to fight better. So a game more like Gumshoe or Night's Back Agents specifically, it's like fighting, and especially when you fight like vampires. Night's Back Agents is super spies versus vampires, just for context. It's like Jason Bourne versus Dracula. When you fight vampires, they're super strong and they kill you fast. So you want to use other ways to defeat them. And that's just really appealing to me, is that like combat is the last resort. As far as just games that I love, I just played this game with James last weekend, and I know that they're taking a lot of inspiration for the MCDM game, Edge of Empire. Really, really fun with just successes or failures. No math. Just the dice say you did it, or the dice say you don't do it, and then you cancel them out, and whatever you have left determines whether you did it. And then there's a second ability that gives, or a second symbol that gives kind of narrative control to you, which is also really, really fun if you roll a lot of them. And Shadow of the Demon Lord also has really, really cool combat. If you've ever played that, I like that game a lot.
Wow.
Okay,
James?
Go ahead, James.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh.
No, don't be sorry. I think those are great answers, honestly. I like the combat in all of those systems. I do enjoy D&D combat for the first usually 3 rounds. And the problem with D&D combat for me is that you start a battle with all of your cool stuff. And then, a couple rounds into it, you're like, well, I did all my cool stuff, and now now I'm just swinging a sword, or I'm just casting a cantrip, or that kind of thing. And so I think that turns battle into a slog, especially when it's like, those 3 rounds happened at the beginning of the adventure day, and now we're on the 3rd battle, and in the first round, all I can do is swing a sword or that kind of thing, right? Or I'm saving it for what I know to be the villain battle, because I don't want to run out of stuff. So that can be hard, and I think there's a lot of assumptions baked into D&D that make that hard. But I do think D&D does do combat pretty well, just not long combat well.
Hmm.
Right. We played 4th edition the other day, and I think 4th edition stands up a little bit longer in combat, but still has that same problem of like, I've used all my encounter powers, I've used all my, but I really do like 4th edition D&D combat quite a bit. Rudy mentioned Shadow of the Demon Lord already. I'm a fan of that. Star Wars is top of mind for me because Rudy and I just played it as well. Zweihander has some interesting combat in it.
does.
It is certainly more deadly,
Hmm.
and you can do things like parry an incoming blow, or you have this action point system that you can use that I think is really good, and is also
Cool.
in Warhammer fantasy roleplay.
Fantasy Age is a game I've been playing lately, which was
Oh,
the
yeah.
Dragon Age RPG. Then the license was lost, so it became Fantasy Age. But that has a lot of unique. There's this mechanic called stunt points
Hmm.
Yes.
that you use that gives you like a lot of cool abilities that you can do. But it doesn't always. You don't always get stun points on your turn. So when you do get them, it's very exciting, and it makes combat a lot more unique and dynamic.
Hmm.
Versus I can do the same thing on every turn. It's like, well, you never know. You might get a bunch of stem points, and then you can do a bunch of different things. So
Yeah, I played the Expanse RPG, and that is the same system.
Yes.
And I really like that. I really like the stunt points that you can get in there. I also really enjoyed Mutants and Masterminds. It's been years since I've played it, but the combat in that is interesting because of the ways people use their powers and devices and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great answers and a few systems there I'll be definitely looking into. I can see over your shoulder, James, there's a Star Wars
Oh, yes.
spaceship on the shelf.
Yes, yeah, there's a Star Destroyer over my right shoulder there.
So there's a whole raft of other things, but that was the one that sort of caught the eye the most. So you mentioned there Zweihander, which could be far deadly with the action point system. You've, James, have written the adventure for the starter set, and as mentioned earlier, Eternal Night of Lockwood. So what has it been like producing for a grimdark system, which is Zweihander, as opposed to the high fantasy that is Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and sort of the missive that I was given when I started working with Zweihander was like, how can we get people who play D&D to play more Zweihander, right? And so a lot of what we've been doing is playing in this space of like somewhere between the grimmest grimdark and the high fantasy of D&D, right? What I've been calling gray fantasy, where like a lot of grimdark things, you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to make some coin killing monsters or whatever. And so in Eternal Night of Lockwood and in the starter set, you're still saving people. You're still doing things. In fact, Rudy played through the starter set.
I did. I played through both of these.
Yeah, that's right. So Rudy play tested Lockwood with me in the original campaign, and then on stream to promote the starter set. We have a streamed session that Rudy was part of the cast, and that was really fun. And so that idea, we wanted to bring the idea of like, you're still heroic, you're not totally selfish, but that you can be selfish in your pursuits and you can leave people behind. And so there's this mechanic called corruption in Zweihander that's very sort of important, where it's like every time you do something selfish or something greedy or don't reach out a helping hand to someone who needs it, you can take corruption. There's a lot of things you can do to take corruption. And then at the end of the session, if you've taken a lot of corruption, your alignment, which exists on a law chaos scale, not a good or evil scale, just law chaos, can shift more towards chaos or more towards law, depending on where it is. More towards law, you get these things called fate points eventually, which fate points you can spend during combat to turn a blow that would kill you into a blow that wouldn't kill you.
Pretty strong. Fate points are pretty strong.
They're very strong, and you want them because combats can be very deadly. And at the end of our big Lockwood playtest, people were spending fate points like candy. It was wild.
Let me tell you, Rudy racked up that corruption also.
That's right. That's right. And if you rack up your corruption, you can develop, basically things that make your character worse at adventuring. If you rack up too much chaos and corruption and things
Worse
like
at
that.
adventuring, better at killing.
Ooh,
That's true.
nice.
That's true. And it also the magic system can be pretty fun because you can essentially embrace chaos to really pump up your spell casting. But if you do, that can lead to some weird, wild magic effects, including like there's like a chart you roll on, and where something weird might happen. And then it's like, or roll on the next chart. And then there's a result on that's like, or roll on the next chart. And the third chart, everything is really bad. Like a pit can swallow you into hell. And your character just dies, right? But you need to roll on a bunch of different charts to get there and that kind of thing.
And fate points, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that's what a fate point is good for, stopping you from being sucked into hell. So yeah, it was very fun to work on a system that isn't as forgiving to the players, and also a system that has fewer magical ways to solve problems.
Yes.
So it meant that it was like, okay, well, I don't need to worry about what if they cast Speak with Dead, or what if they have Dimension Door or that kind of thing. It meant that I could set up obstacles that were a little bit more straightforward without having to think around them, which was great because often in D&D, even at first level, it's like, oh, they speak a different language? No worries, I cast comprehend languages, and this puzzle no longer matters, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Well, just to bring it back to villain, one of the playtests we had, there was no limit on the amount of Zone of Truths that could be cast.
Yes.
Wow.
So it was literally like, I cast Zone of Truth on the person casting Zone of... It was wild. That was one of those playtests where it's like, okay, this spell is out of the game entirely. Because when you're building a game that's about subterfuge and intrigue, Zone of Truth kind of breaks everything.
For real.
Yeah.
So that is quite something, and I can't wait to sort of get myself a copy and have a read through. And for those that are definitely intrigued by it, and I'm sure there are many out there who are, to go and get a copy from Amazon and where all good books are published, as you mentioned earlier, Rudy.
Yes. March 14th is the official release date, I believe.
Yes.
Which is the week before or after the Dungeons and Dragons movie?
I think the Dungeons and Dragons movies moved to the last day of the month now.
Yeah, it's the 31st. Okay. Yeah. So buy our book to get ready for that D&D movie. It is very similar to our book. Yes.
There you go. You heard it here first, everybody. We have written the official adventure for the D&D movie.
Official tie-in adventure.
That's right.
I'm putting that as a tagline somewhere.
That's not
true. It's on audio. It surely can't be edited out. But speaking of audio and things along those lines, are you both still involved with podcasts at all? I know, Rudy, you were producing podcasts for a long time, and obviously James, yourself, a podcaster for many years.
Nope.
Completely backed out of that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rudy. Yeah, I was going to say, I thought...
I don't work for the podcast that I used to work for anymore. No further comment there.
Fair.
But WebDM, if you're familiar with that YouTube channel, they have a Patreon podcast they put out every week that I edit. And there's another podcast called Speculate that I edit. And Speculate's cool because they're always playing games that I'm not familiar with. They just finished playing a game called Girl by Moonlight, which is very similar to, if you know the Christopher Nolan film Inception. It's like you go into the dream world as a different person. I think they even call themselves Dream Warriors, which kind of gives you context for the kind of game they're running. But yeah, they do a lot of like Powered by the Apocalypse or more narrative focused games. No D&D there. So if you're interested, and they're all science fiction writers. Like they're all published sci-fi and fantasy writers, which is also a special treat because they bring a lot of really unique and cool like stuff to their characters and into what they do. So yeah, speculateSF.com. I don't talk about it enough.
All
So,
right.
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description, as I said I
Mm.
would. What about yourself, James? Beyond Twitch streaming and MCDM and all those things, are you audio in any
No,
way?
I'm totally out of the podcasting game now. So yeah, there is not any podcasting that I do at the moment. Although look forward to Metal Gear. Is it solid?
Okay.
Coming at some point where
So
I
I
I'm in love with
uh
this already.
we went to Gen Con a few years ago and drove there, which
Mhm.
from where we were was like a 14-hour drive or something like that.
Yeah,
It was a long time,
easily.
yeah. But James and our good friend Vegas Lancaster, when we drove back home, uh they were talking about it, and then I fell asleep for 7 hours. And when I woke up, they were still talking about this podcast that they're gonna make about Metal Gear Solid. So yeah, look forward to that coming soon.
Yeah, so we're gonna go through Metal Gear Solid scene by scene, and we're gonna rate each scene. So that'll happen eventually. So look forward to that. Rudy's so excited for it; he loves Metal Gear Solid.
What is the rating scale you're using, also, James?
Oh.
Can you reveal that?
Poor Adam. Yes,
No, this
the
is
rating
good.
scale we're using is a rating from Raiden, the worst, to solid, the best, obviously. So that's the rating scale for our game. Raiden to solid, with of course liquid and solidus in between. Yeah. So I
that is
won't capitulate
epic.
it too much, but maybe you can come on, Adam, and when the podcast happens, and give us your rating for a scene in Metal Gear Solid.
I will be happy to do so because that is one, a great concept, and two, a fantastic game. So I'm all over that.
Maybe next year. We'll see if it happens.
So between, I mean, Rudy, I sort of trawl through your Twitter because I'm a bit of a stalker before I do interviews and just sort of checking back. And you also helped put the Blade Runner TTRPG onto Roll20.
Oh yes, I freelance with a company called Sigil Entertainment, and they do a lot of conversion work to take your tabletop RPG and convert it into Roll20. And I worked on the Blade Runner RPG. I'm currently working on the Alien RPG and some stuff for Ghostfire Games, which is a very cool D&D third party publisher. Holy crap, the Blade Runner game is really, really great on Roll20, and the Alien game is going to be even cooler. So big ups to those. If you're a fan of either of those franchises, both of these games do an incredible job meeting the atmosphere and tone of the movies, and they look so great on Roll20, like really cool animations and effects. And Blade Runner, I played some of it with James. We didn't finish, but Blade Runner has a mechanic where you look at a picture and then, like Where's Wally style, look for the clues in the picture. And it works perfectly on Roll20. So maybe even better than in person.
That is
Maybe.
That's
really
awesome.
But
yeah. It's Free League have put out two really good games there. I'm so glad that you're taking, well, you're being paid for it, but you are putting them on Roll20 for us to enjoy, which is fantastic. Yeah. So between all of these projects, do you get much? Each of you get much sort of time to relax and enjoy away from the hobby, or is the hobby your downtime, or how does it work for each of you?
Wow.
Yeah, I nap a lot, so I have a lot of free time.
I one of the reasons that I don't really podcast anymore is because I needed some downtime to be able to do stuff, and taking the full-time job at MCDM has also allowed me to. I'm not taking on as many freelance projects anymore, right? And so yeah, I probably have more downtime since taking the job at MCDM and everything than I have had in the 5 years before that. And so that's great. I feel very good and rested, and we do play a fair amount of games in our downtime, but I think we try not to, I don't know if Rudy does this, I don't want to speak for him, but I know when we play games together, we try not to like turn it into a stream or a podcast or something like that, so that we can just enjoy the time with our friends and play. Yeah.
I mean, we could set up a microphone and make a podcast of
Never.
our games.
Never.
That'd be really popular, I'm sure.
Bite your tongue, sir.
All right.
Bite your tongue.
Yeah, just playing for funsies is not a waste of time. Definitely not. It's
It's good for me. It's restorative. I love playing games with friends, and it's like, oh yeah, this is why all of this is awesome, because we get to do this stuff. Yeah,
100%. And we have covered a number of topics ranging from releases, projects, and sort of personal pursuits and all those sort of good things. Is there anything at this stage of the interview that we haven't mentioned that you want to bring up just before we close out?
Vote blue.
I just thank you for having us on again, Adam.
Yes.
Like, this is a great podcast, and it's a pleasure to be on and to talk with you always. And so thank you for making the community a great place and highlighting creators.
I think you make creators, and the pair of you have made. Well, it's because of the pair of you that I am where I am today. So thank you. If we come full circle, does that make sense?
Oh my goodness!
It's very
thank
sweet
you
of you
to you for thanking me for thanking you. I don't know,
because you were like, I could do what those guys do. Seems pretty easy.
Bums? Yeah, I can do it better.
That wasn't quite the train of thought. It was like, I want to do what those guys do. I'm just not sure how, and it's taken time, but I think I'm somewhere near the lower end of the bar where you may have once rested.
I think you have surpassed, and that is a good thing.
Really, yes.
But it has been so special to get the pair of you on and speak to you with respect to all the fantastic things you're working on. I'd love to get you back on in the future. There's always projects.
Absolutely.
You're always working on new things. If you'd be willing to come back and join me. And I definitely wouldn't mind coming on Metal Gear Is It Solid in 2024 and beyond.
Yes. Yes, we're building the guest list. Rudy's coming on too. He's excited.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
So if I can ask each of you just to remind us where we can find you on social media and everything you're associated with, that would be wonderful.
Yes, James is at James Introcaso on Twitter.
And Rudy is at Rudy Basso on Twitter. And Instagram?
Yes, I post dog pictures.
You do.
Almost exclusively.
Who doesn't want that?
Dogs and food. That's what Instagram is all about.
That's what social media, that's all social media should be.
Yes,
dogs
agreed.
and food. That would be incredible.
So, yes, I enjoy your dog and food pictures. The pizzas you put up sometimes are
Thank you.
Delicious.
Oh, yes.
I can't eat them,
Legendary.
but they look delicious. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and I really look forward to having you both on the show again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the show, then go to www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com. Alternatively, you can find us over on Twitter @ReturnSnyder. We have a Linktree link in the description of this episode. And if you want to support us, come and join us over on Patreon. And we also have a Discord server. Please leave us a review, because we'd love to learn how to improve the channel and provide better content out for those who are listening. Until we speak again, thank you.